Imagine a quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind where the sun casts golden rays over a meticulously crafted garden, only to be shattered by the audacity of entitled neighbors who think your land is their playground. That's exactly what happened to me. Alex Thornton. When my serene sanctuary became a parking lot for a lavish Sweet 16 bash. But what they didn't know was that their arrogance would ignite a plan so bold it would ripple through our gated community of Meadowbrook Estates, leaving a legacy of justice that no one would forget. My name is Alex, and for 17 years, I've called Meadowbrook Estates home, a haven of sprawling estates and manicured lawns in suburban Virginia. My 3-acre property, nestled against a shimmering lake, is my pride and joy. Every blade of grass, every wildflower in the meadow, and every stone in the winding path I laid by hand reflects years of sweat and love. The ancient oaks shading my koi pond and the vibrant black-eyed Susans blooming near the water are more than landscaping. They're my legacy, a testament to a life spent cultivating beauty in a world that often forgets it. That fateful Saturday, I was returning from a routine grocery run, humming along to an old jazz tune, when I noticed a peculiar sight. A convoy of luxury cars, BMWs, Porsches, and Mercedes, snaked into my private driveway, their tires crunching over my carefully tended gravel. My heart sank as I pulled closer. Over 24 vehicles were sprawled across my meadow, their gleaming hoods mocking the wildflowers they crushed. A valet in a crisp red vest waved a Bentley onto my property as if it were a public lot. "What in heaven's name is going on?" I shouted, my voice trembling with disbelief. The valet, barely glancing up, replied with infuriating nonchalance, "Parking for the Martinez party next door. HOA approved it." My blood ran cold. Eleanor Martinez, my neighbor, was the queen bee of Meadowbrook's HOA. A woman whose charm masked a ruthless sense of entitlement. Her mansion, a gaudy monument to wealth, was now festooned with pink balloons and a glittering Sweet 16 banner for her daughter, Sophia. Music thumped through the air, and teenagers in designer outfits swarmed her lawn like peacocks, fury rising. I abandoned my groceries on the kitchen counter and stormed to Eleanor's doorstep. She greeted me with a smile as polished as her diamond earrings, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of disdain. "Alex, darling, enjoying the sunshine?" she cooed, blocking her doorway like a sentinel. "Why are there cars trampling my property?" I demanded, struggling to keep my voice steady. Her smile didn't waver. "Oh, it's Sophia's big day. The HOA sent a notice about overflow parking. Didn't you see it?" She produced a crumpled paper with a flourish, pointing to a scrawled signature from HOA President Marlo Bennett. "Temporary easement," she said, as if that settled everything. I scanned the document, my anger mounting. "This is my land. Eleanor, I never agreed to this." Her eyes glinted with mock sympathy. "The board voted. Alex, it's just for today." Where else would Sophia's friends park? As if scripted. A Porsche Cayenne roared across my meadow, flattening a patch of daisies I'd nurtured for years. "Those cars need to move. Now," I insisted, my voice low but firm. Eleanor's facade slipped, revealing a flash of arrogance. "Really? Alex? Judge Wilson's son is here, Dr. Patel's daughters, even Mayor Collins' twins. Do you want to make a scene in front of Meadowbrook's elite?" A cluster of parents sipping champagne glanced our way, their curiosity piqued. "This wasn't authorized," I shot back. "That document doesn't specify my meadow, and it certainly doesn't have my consent." Eleanor's smile turned icy. "Don't be difficult. It's a few hours. Live a little." She turned away, dismissing me with a wave as she greeted new arrivals. I stood there, the weight of her entitlement sinking in, watching as another car rolled over my stone birdbath, toppling it into the grass by sunset. 57 vehicles had invaded my sanctuary, their tire tracks scarring my lawn, their drivers oblivious to the havoc they'd wrought. A teenager lounged on my private dock, tossing pebbles into my koi pond while texting, as if my property were a public park. As night fell, the party's music echoed across the lake, mocking my sleepless vigil. I sat in my darkened living room, laptop glowing, scouring the HOA bylaws for answers. What I found sent a surge of righteous fury through me. The easement required my explicit written permission, which Eleanor's flimsy document lacked. It was a blatant overreach, possibly fraudulent, and it lit a fire in me. This wasn't just about a party. It was about power, privilege, and a community that let people like Eleanor bend rules to suit their whims. As the last strains of music faded past midnight, I made a vow under the starlit sky. Eleanor and the HOA thought they could trample my rights and walk away unscathed. They were wrong. Tomorrow, I'd set in motion a plan that would turn their arrogance into a lesson they'd never forget, a lesson that would echo through Meadowbrook's manicured streets and beyond. As dawn painted the lake in hues of gold and mist, I stood on my porch, coffee in hand, staring at the wreckage of my meadow. 7 luxury cars remained, their chrome gleaming defiantly amidst the trampled wildflowers and churned earth. The audacity of Eleanor Martinez and the HOA's betrayal fueled a fire in me, but it was the discovery of their deception that turned my resolve to steel. This wasn't just a party gone wrong, it was a calculated power play, and I was ready to turn their game against them. By Sunday morning, the chaos of Sophia's Sweet 16 had faded, but the scars on my land remained. Tire tracks carved deep ruts through my lawn. My koi pond shimmered with discarded champagne flutes, and a cracked stone bench lay half buried under a pile of party debris. I counted the 7 abandoned vehicles, a sapphire Porsche, a red BMW, and others belonging to Meadowbrook's elite offspring. Their owners, likely still nursing hangovers, hadn't bothered to reclaim them. Eleanor, in her silk robe, sipped coffee on her balcony, oblivious to the destruction she'd orchestrated. I dialed HOA President Marlo Bennett, my voice steady despite the rage simmering beneath. "Marlo, explain why you approved parking on my property without my consent," I demanded. His cheerful tone faltered. "Eleanor said you'd agreed verbally. Alex, you were out of town, so we couldn't get your signature." The lie was so blatant it stung. "I never agreed to anything," I snapped, watching a heron struggle to land near my ruined pond. "There's been damage, thousands in repairs." "And 7 cars are still here," Marlo stammered. "A miscommunication, I'm sure. Eleanor's a valued board member, very generous with contributions." The word hung in the air like a confession. "Contributions?" I pressed. "To the community," he mumbled. But the hesitation in his voice betrayed him. I later learned Eleanor had donated $15,000 to the HOA's beautification fund, a fund suspiciously tied to her own mansion's renovations. The pieces clicked. Her influence was bought, not earned. Hanging up, I called my old friend Clara, a property lawyer with a knack for cutting through bureaucratic nonsense. "Alex, they've overstepped," she said after I emailed her photos of the damage in Eleanor's flimsy easement document. "The HOA can't grant access to your land without your written consent. That paper's worthless without your signature, and it smells like fraud." Her words were a lifeline. "Document everything," she urged. "Every tire mark, every broken stem. You've got a case." By noon, I'd compiled a dossier of destruction, photos of crushed daisies, oil-stained paths, and a toppled oak sapling I'd planted in memory of my late father. The repair estimate climbed to $8,500, but it wasn't just about money. It was about respect. Digging deeper into the HOA covenants, I found my weapon. Section 7.4, clear as day, allowed me to manage unauthorized vehicles left on my property after 24 hours with proper notification. A plan began to form, one that would make Eleanor and her cronies regret underestimating me. Tuesday morning, I printed 7 neon orange notices, each a legal warning that the vehicles would be considered abandoned by 5 p.m. Wednesday. I placed them on windshields, snapping time-stamped photos for evidence. Then, I made 3 calls that would set the stage for a reckoning. First, to a towing company owned by a gruff ex-Marine who owed me a favor. Second, to my college roommate, Sarah, who now ran a high-end auction house specializing in luxury cars. Third, to a local security firm to rent portable fencing and cameras. By evening, whispers of my plan were already spreading through Meadowbrook's manicured streets. Eleanor didn't waste time. She stormed across her lawn, her designer heels sinking into the earth. Fury etched into her perfectly made-up face. "Remove those notices now, Alex," she demanded, waving her phone like a weapon. "That Porsche belongs to Sophia's boyfriend, and the others are board members' kids' cars." I met her gaze, unfazed. "The notices give until 5 p.m. tomorrow, per HOA rules. You should know. You helped write them." Her voice rose, drawing stares from a passing jogger. "This is absurd. It was just a party." "A party that destroyed my property," I countered, holding up my phone with photos of the damage. Tire tracks, dead koi, broken benches, $8,500 in repairs. "You think your connections make you untouchable?" Her eyes narrowed. "My husband knows people. Alex, you'll regret this." I smiled thinly. Wednesday, 5 p.m. After that, things get interesting. As Eleanor retreated, already dialing her allies, I felt a strange calm. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready to play their game on my terms. Meadowbrook was about to learn that justice doesn't bend to wealth or status. As Wednesday's dawn broke over Meadowbrook Estates, a thick fog cloaked my meadow, lending an almost cinematic drama to the scene unfolding on my property. The 7 abandoned cars, gleaming symbols of privilege, sat fenced in like trophies of a battle yet to be won. My plan, meticulously crafted over sleepless nights, was about to come to life. Eleanor Martinez and the HOA thought they could trample my rights and walk away unscathed. Today, they'd learn that even the powerful answer to consequences. By 6 a.m., the security firm I'd hired arrived, their trucks rumbling softly as they installed high-definition cameras around the perimeter of my meadow. The portable fencing, delivered at dawn, glinted in the morning light, encircling each car like a silent accusation. My college roommate, Sarah, had outdone herself, setting up an online auction platform that was already buzzing with early bidders from as far as California. I checked my phone. The sapphire Porsche was at $10,000, a steal for its value, and the red BMW wasn't far behind. Meadowbrook's elite were about to get a wake-up call. At 10 a.m., I stepped outside to find a small crowd of neighbors lingering near my property line, their whispers carrying on the breeze. Mrs. Jenkins, a retired librarian who'd long grumbled about Eleanor's late-night parties, gave me a knowing nod. "About time someone stood up to her," she murmured, clutching her dachshund. The gossip had spread like wildfire through Meadowbrook's private social media groups, and a local news van was already parked discreetly down the street, sniffing out a story. Eleanor didn't disappoint. By noon, she charged across her lawn, her designer scarf fluttering like a battle flag. "This is insanity! Alex!" she shouted, her voice cracking as she gestured at the fenced cars. "You can't auction off our children's vehicles." I stood by my mailbox, calmly sorting letters. Section 7. "For Eleanor. You've had since Monday to move them." The notices were clear, her face flushed a shade that matched her scarlet lipstick. "My husband's lawyer is on his way. You'll be buried in lawsuits by sundown." I held up my phone, showing a photo of her directing a Mercedes onto my meadow during the party. "I've got evidence of trespassing, property damage, and a fraudulent easement. Your lawyer might want to see this." Her eyes widened, but she recovered quickly. "Marlowe's calling an emergency board meeting at 4 p.m. Stop this now or you'll regret it." I smiled, unshaken. "I'll regret nothing. 5 p.m. is the deadline. After that, the auction goes live." As Eleanor stormed off, I noticed a teenager, Sophia's boyfriend, James, pacing near the Porsche, his face pale as he spoke frantically into his phone. A twinge of pity flickered, but I remembered the dead koi floating in my pond, the shattered bench that had been my father's favorite spot. This wasn't just about cars, it was about a community that let privilege run rampant. By 2 p.m., my preparations were complete. A small podium stood near the property line, flanked by a refreshment table with lemonade and homemade cookies, a touch of southern hospitality to contrast the brewing storm. The auction website now had 75 registered bidders, and Sarah texted me, "Porsche is at $20,000. This is going to be epic." At 3:30 p.m., Marlowe arrived, his usual polish replaced by a nervous sheen. Alex, let's talk, he pleaded, glancing at the growing crowd. We can cover the damages, name a number. I folded my arms. You told me Saturday there was nothing I could do. Now you're offering deals? It's too late for that. His eyes darted to the news van, now joined by a second. You're making enemies, he warned. And you're losing allies, I replied, nodding toward Mrs. Jenkins, who was now chatting with a reporter. As the clock ticked closer to 5:00 p.m., the air grew thick with anticipation. Neighbors I'd barely spoken to in years gathered, some with phones out, recording the spectacle. A soft chime from my tablet signaled the auction's pre-bidding phase had begun. Eleanor's daughter, Sophia, appeared, her eyes red from crying. "Please, Mr. Thornton," she whispered. "James's dad will disown him if you sell his car." For a moment, I wavered. Her sincerity was a stark contrast to her mother's arrogance. But then I saw Eleanor in the distance, dialing her phone with a smirk, and my resolve hardened. As the clock struck 4:45 p.m., the fog over Meadowbrook Estates had lifted, but a storm of tension brewed in its place. My meadow, once a sanctuary, was now a stage, with 7 fenced-in luxury cars as the main act and a growing crowd of neighbors as the audience. The auction website on my tablet glowed with bids climbing by the second, the Porsche now at $35,000, the BMW at $18,000. Eleanor Martinez's smug confidence was about to crash, and I stood ready to deliver a lesson in accountability that would echo through our manicured community. Sheriff Davis stepped out of his patrol car, his weathered face calm but curious as he surveyed the scene. The crowd parted, phones raised, capturing every moment for Meadowbrook's rumor mill. Eleanor pounced before I could speak, her voice shrill. "Sheriff, this man is stealing our children's cars. It's outrageous." I handed Davis a thick folder, my hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "These vehicles were abandoned on my property after an unauthorized party," I explained. "I followed HOA Section 7.4 to the letter, 24-hour notices, time-stamped photos, and a clear deadline of 5:00 p.m. today." Davis flipped through my dossier, my property deed, the fraudulent easement document Eleanor had waived, photos of tire tracks and dead koi, and the neon orange notices. His brow furrowed as he studied the evidence. "This looks airtight," he said, glancing at Eleanor. "Ma'am, you're claiming HOA approval, but this easement lacks the property owner's signature." Eleanor's face reddened. "The board voted. Marlowe signed it." Marlowe, shifting nervously, muttered, "There may have been oversights." "Oversights?" I interjected, my voice carrying to the crowd. "You allowed 57 cars to destroy my meadow based on a lie. I called the HOA office. No record of any vote exists." A murmur rippled through the onlookers, and Mrs. Jenkins whispered to a neighbor, "Told you she's been pulling strings for years." Sophia, Eleanor's daughter, pushed forward, tears streaking her face. "Please, Mr. Thornton, don't sell James's Porsche. His dad will never forgive him." Her raw emotion pierced me, but the memory of Eleanor's smirk hardened my resolve. Marlowe, sweating under the afternoon sun, pulled me aside. "Alex, stop this now. We'll pay for the damages. $10,000, no questions." I shook my head. "This isn't about money. It's about fairness. You let Eleanor's influence override my rights." The auction timer ticked down. 10 minutes to go. Eleanor, now flanked by her husband, David, and a slick lawyer in a tailored suit, stormed closer. "You'll regret this," she hissed. "My husband golfs with the mayor. We'll bury you." I met her gaze, unflinching. "You buried yourself when you faked that easement. I have security footage of you directing cars onto my land." Her lawyer blinked, clearly unaware of the document's flaws. The crowd grew restless, and a news reporter edged closer, her camera trained on us. At 4:58 p.m., James, the Porsche's owner, tried to climb the fence, shouting, "That's my car!" A security guard gently restrained him, and Sophia sobbed louder, drawing sympathetic glances. As the clock hit 5 p.m., a chime from my tablet signaled the auction's start. Bids surged. The Porsche hit $45,000. Eleanor grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Stop this, or I'll make your life hell," Sheriff Davis stepped in, his voice firm. "Ma'am, let go. That's assault." The crowd gasped, and Eleanor released me, her face a mask of fury and fear. I signaled Sarah at the podium to pause. "Let's talk inside," I said, gesturing to my house. 5 minutes, or the Porsche goes to a bidder in Texas." As we moved towards my porch, the crowd's whispers followed us like a chorus. Eleanor, Marlowe, and the lawyer trailed behind, their confidence crumbling under the weight of their own missteps. This wasn't just a showdown, it was a turning point for Meadowbrook. The air in my living room was thick with tension as Eleanor Martinez, Marlowe Bennett, their lawyer, and Sheriff Davis crowded onto my modest furniture. Outside, the murmur of the growing crowd and the hum of news vans underscored the stakes of this moment. My tablet, propped on the coffee table, showed the auction ticking forward, the Porsche now at $50,000 with bidders from 4 states vying for it. Eleanor's eyes darted to the screen, her composure cracking like fine china. This was no longer her game, it was mine, and I was ready to lay down terms that would reshape Meadowbrook Estates forever. I slid a folder across the table, its contents 3 crisp pages outlining my demands. "This ends now, but on my terms," I said, my voice calm but unyielding. "First, the HOA issues a written apology for granting an unauthorized easement and covers all damages, $8,500 for landscaping, koi pond restoration, and my father's bench. I have 3 contractor estimates to back it up." Marlowe opened his mouth to protest, but I raised a hand. "Second, Eleanor resigns from the HOA board today. Her seat goes to an elected member, not another crony. And third, the HOA bylaws are amended to require written consent from property owners for any land use. No more backroom deals." Eleanor's gasp was theatrical, her designer purse clutched like a shield. "Resign? I've built this community for a decade," she spat. "Built it for yourself," I countered, leaning forward. "Last year, you fined the Thompsons $600 for a mailbox that was an inch too tall. Yet you threw a party that trashed my land without a second thought." Sheriff Davis, standing by the window, nodded slightly. He'd been called about her late-night parties before. The lawyer, clearly unprepared for the depth of my evidence, skimmed the folder, his brow furrowing at the photos of tire tracks and the fraudulent easement. Marlowe, his tie askew, tried to play peacemaker. "Alex, let's be reasonable. We'll cover the damages and review the bylaws. No need for resignations." I shook my head, pointing to the tablet. "The Porsche just hit $55,000. In 5 minutes, it's gone. Sign. Or the auction continues." Eleanor's husband, David, who'd been silent until now, spoke up, his voice strained. "This is extortion." Sheriff Davis cleared his throat. "It's consequences, sir. Mr. Thornton followed the rules. Your wife didn't." The doorbell rang, followed by pounding. Through the window, I saw angry parents, Judge Wilson, Dr. Patel, and others, demanding answers about their children's cars. Eleanor's face paled as her phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Mom, James's dad is furious. He's here." A new twist emerged. David leaned in, whispering to the lawyer. "Eleanor used HOA funds for our patio renovation. $20,000, mislabeled as community upgrades. If this goes public." The lawyer's eyes widened, and he shot Eleanor a look of betrayal. She froze, her perfect facade crumbling. "Sign," I said, tapping the folder, "or I open the door and let those parents hear about your community upgrades." Marlowe grabbed a pen, his hand trembling. "You've made your point, Alex." Eleanor's mascara streaked as she scrawled her signature, her voice a whisper. "You're destroying my life." I met her gaze. "You destroyed my meadow first." Sheriff Davis witnessed the signatures, his presence lending weight to the moment. As I walked them out, The crowd erupted in murmurs. A reporter snapped photos as Eleanor handed me a check for $8,500, her forced smile barely masking her fury. "This isn't over," she hissed, but I held up the signed agreement. It is, for now. The news vans captured it all, and by evening. Meadowbrook's social media groups were ablaze with the story. The headline would read, "HOA settles after property rights scandal." I'd made sure of that by tipping off the press. As the sun set over my battered meadow, I felt a quiet triumph. This wasn't just about my land, it was about a community waking up to fairness. But a late-night visitor was about to reveal a secret that would shake Meadowbrook to its core. As fireflies flickered over the lake, casting a soft glow across my scarred meadow, I sat on my porch, savoring the quiet triumph of the day's victory. The $8,500 check from Eleanor Martinez rested on my kitchen counter. A tangible symbol of accountability rested from her iron grip, but the stillness of the evening was shattered by a hesitant knock at my door. Standing there, illuminated by the porch light, was David, Eleanor's husband, his face etched with exhaustion and something deeper, guilt. "Alex, we need to talk," he said, his voice low, almost pleading. What he revealed next would unravel Meadowbrook Estate's polished facade and set the stage for a reckoning far beyond my wildest plans. I invited David inside, offering him a chair by the fireplace. He declined coffee, sitting stiffly on the edge of my couch, his hands clasped tightly. "Eleanor didn't tell me the full story until today," he began, staring at the floor. "She used HOA funds, $25,000 over 3 years, for personal projects. Our new pergola, the pool house, even Sophia's party decorations. She called them community enhancements to skirt the rules." My jaw dropped. This wasn't just entitlement. It was theft, cloaked in the HOA's authority. "That's fraud," I said, my voice steady despite the shock. "Why tell me now?" David's eyes met mine, weary but resolute. "Because I'm done covering for her. She fought to stay on the board to keep control, to hide it. I've urged her to repay it, but she thinks her connections will protect her." His confession was a bombshell, one that could topple Meadowbrook's power structure. I leaned back, processing the weight of his words. "If this goes public, it's over for her," I said. He nodded grimly. "I know. That's why I'm here. I want to make this right before it destroys my family." The next morning, I contacted my lawyer friend, Clara, who was already preparing a case against the HOA's overreach. "This changes everything," she said, her voice sharp with excitement. "We need to push for an audit. If David's telling the truth, Eleanor's done." By noon, I drafted a formal request for an emergency HOA meeting to review financial records. Emailing it to every homeowner in Meadowbrook's directory, the response was swift. Neighbors I'd never spoken to replied with support, their frustration with Eleanor's reign bubbling over. Mrs. Jenkins, the retired librarian, forwarded my email to the local paper, amplifying the call. By evening, Meadowbrook's private social media groups were alight with speculation. A retired accountant, Mr. Grayson, offered to assist with the audit, citing years of watching Eleanor's generous donations suspiciously benefit her own property. The news vans, still lingering from the auction drama, caught wind of the brewing scandal. A reporter knocked on my door, notepad in hand. "Is it true the HOA's been misusing funds?" she asked. I smiled, choosing my words carefully. "Let's just say the community deserves transparency. Stay tuned." At 8:00 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Marlowe. "Emergency meeting scheduled tomorrow, 6:00 p.m. Please don't escalate this further." I didn't reply. Instead, I prepared a presentation for the meeting, compiling David's confession, my photos of the party damage, and Clara's legal analysis of the HOA's violations. As I worked, Sophia appeared at my door, her face pale but determined. "Mr. Thornton, I'm sorry for what Mom did," she said softly. "I didn't know about the money. Can I help fix this?" Her sincerity disarmed me, a stark contrast to her mother's arrogance. "Stay for the meeting," I told her. "Your voice matters." As I finalized my notes under the glow of my desk lamp, I realized this fight had grown bigger than my meadow. It was about dismantling a system that favored the powerful over the principled. Tomorrow, Meadowbrook would face its moment of truth. The Meadowbrook Estates Community Center buzzed with tension as I stepped inside, clutching my presentation folder under the weight of 100 curious stares. The room, usually reserved for potlucks and bridge nights, was packed with homeowners, their faces a mix of outrage and anticipation. The emergency HOA meeting, called to address Eleanor Martinez's misconduct, was about to lay bare the truth. My Meadows scars had sparked a rebellion, and tonight, Meadowbrook would decide whether fairness would prevail over privilege. Retired Judge Thomas Hamilton, newly elected to replace Eleanor, banged his gavel, his silver hair gleaming under the fluorescent lights. "Order, please," he called, his voice commanding yet calm. "We're here to review serious allegations of financial misconduct." Gasps rippled through the crowd as I took the floor, projector casting images of my trampled meadow and the fraudulent easement onto a screen. "On Saturday, 57 cars invaded my property without my consent," I began, my voice steady. "But this goes beyond my land. An audit has uncovered $25,000 in misappropriated HOA funds funneled by Eleanor Martinez for personal use." The room erupted. "Where's Eleanor?" shouted Mr. Grayson, the retired accountant who'd joined the audit team. Judge Hamilton raised a hand. "Mrs. Martinez has resigned and, with her husband, has reimbursed the funds with interest. Their home is for sale." David, standing quietly in the back, met my gaze and nodded. His shoulders slumped with the weight of his wife's downfall. I continued, showing receipts for a pergola, pool house, and party decorations, all mislabeled as community projects. A neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, stood up, her voice trembling. "She fined us $600 for a mailbox, but used our dues for her backyard." The crowd's anger swelled, but I pivoted to solutions. "This isn't just about punishment," I said. "It's about reform. I propose new bylaws requiring transparency in HOA spending and written consent for any property use." Judge Hamilton nodded, his eyes sharp. "Seconded," called Mrs. Jenkins, her dachshund asleep at her feet. The vote was swift, unanimous approval for the reforms. Marlowe, still on the board but visibly humbled, raised his hand. "Alex, your leadership here, it's changed us. I'm sorry we failed you." As the meeting adjourned, neighbors who'd once ignored me approached with gratitude. Mrs. Thompson hugged me tightly. "You gave us courage," she whispered. "We've been silent too long." Outside, under a starlit sky, Sophia waited by my car, holding a small potted daisy. "For your meadow," she said softly. "I'm applying to State University's environmental program. Mom wanted business school, but I'm choosing my own path." Her growth, a quiet defiance of her mother's legacy, stirred something in me, a hope for Meadowbrook's future. 6 months later, my meadow bloomed again, wildflowers dancing in the breeze. The HOA, now led by Judge Hamilton, had transformed. Property values rose, complaints dropped, and the garden committee overflowed with volunteers. At the summer picnic, hosted on my restored land, children laughed around a new gazebo named Fairview Haven, a nod to the community's renewed commitment to equity. Marlowe, handing me a lemonade, smiled wryly. "You turned us upside down, Alex, for the better." As I watched the sunset paint the lake gold, I realized this fight had been about more than my meadow. It was about standing firm, demanding respect, and building a community where rules applied to all, not just the powerless. As laughter and chatter filled the air at the Meadowbrook Estates summer picnic, my restored meadow glowed under the golden hues of a setting sun. Children darted around the new Fairview Haven gazebo, their joy a stark contrast to the chaos of that fateful Saturday months ago. The community had transformed, its rules now rooted in fairness, its spirit lifted by a shared commitment to respect. But as I sipped lemonade, a familiar figure emerged from a sleek car parked in my driveway, Sophia Martinez, holding a small wooden box, her expression a mix of resolve and nostalgia, Her arrival promised a final chapter that would seal Meadowbrook's rebirth and leave me with a lesson I'd carry forever. Sophia approached, her college-bound confidence a far cry from the tearful teenager I'd met during the auction. "Mr. Thornton, this is for you," she said, handing me the box. Inside was a hand-carved plaque, inscribed with the words, "To Alex Thornton, guardian of Fairview Haven, for standing tall." "I made it in my woodworking class," she explained, her voice soft but steady. "Mom's gone to Arizona with Dad, but I wanted to stay and thank you. You showed me what it means to do what's right, even when it's hard." Her words hit me like a warm breeze, stirring memories of my own battles, not just with Eleanor, but with the quiet compromises I'd made over years of living in Meadowbrook's shadow of privilege. I invited Sophia to walk with me along the lake, where fireflies were beginning to dance. "I'm proud of you," I told her. "Choosing your own path takes courage, especially after everything." She smiled, glancing at the water. "I'm studying environmental science because of your meadow. It's more than land, it's a legacy." As we talked, neighbors gathered nearby, raising glasses in a toast led by Judge Hamilton. "To boundaries respected and lessons learned," he declared, his voice carrying over the crowd. I caught Marlowe's eye, now a reformed ally, and he nodded with a wry grin. Mrs. Jenkins, her dachshund trotting behind, handed me a community newsletter, its headline proclaiming "Meadowbrook Reborn, a new era of equity." The article detailed the HOA's overhaul, the $25,000 restitution from Eleanor, and the new bylaws ensuring transparency and consent. My meadow, once a battleground, was now a symbol of what a community could become when it valued every voice. But Sophia's gift held a deeper truth. As I placed the plaque on my mantle that night, I reflected on the lessons this ordeal had etched into my heart. Standing up for what's right isn't just about winning, it's about inspiring others to find their own strength. For older folks like me, who've seen decades of change, it's a reminder that courage doesn't fade with age. It grows, rooted in the wisdom of knowing what matters, integrity, respect, and the power of community. Eleanor's downfall wasn't the victory. The real triumph was Meadowbrook's transformation, a place where rules applied equally, where neighbors became friends, and where a single stand could ripple into lasting change. I learned, too, that fairness isn't a gift, it's a fight worth waging, no matter how powerful the opponent, for those of us in our later years, who cherish our homes and the legacies we've built. This fight is personal. It's about protecting what we've poured our lives into and ensuring our communities reflect the values we hold dear. Sophia's choice to forge her own path reminded me that our actions, even in conflict, can plant seeds for the next generation to grow differently, better. As I stood on my porch, watching the stars emerge above the lake, I felt a quiet peace. My meadow was whole again, but more importantly, so was Meadowbrook. And in that wholeness, I found a truth worth carrying forward. One person's resolve can light the way for many,